We are about ready to start, so if you'll find an open seat of your choice, there's plenty. Thank you. We certainly expected a full house, and we're still ready for that. My name is Tracy Lopeman. I'm the superintendent of Maricopa Unified School District. Thank you for spending part of your Tuesday here at the Maricopa Unified School District Town Hall for facts about the MUSD bond election coming up. To start us off properly, I would like to welcome Cadet Trask up here to the front to lead us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you, Cadet Trask. I appreciate your presence. Thank you, Colonel Kirksey, for the presence of the Air Force Junior ROTC that we're very proud of at Maricopa High School. Tonight is about learning the facts regarding the bond election. So I want to offer an update regarding the developments in the district and talk about the specific details related to the Proposition 437, which I think is an interesting play on numbers. Instead of 347, it's 437. And then, of course, there will be time for questions and answers at the end. Allow me to take an opportunity to introduce part of our leadership that's here tonight. We have Governing Board Vice President Ben Owens here. Thank you, and yay. I always think so. And board member Mr. Joshua Judd is here as well. We also have city leadership. Vice Mayor Wade is here. Council member Rich Vitiello is here somewhere. There he is. There you are. I'm looking right at you. And Chief Stahl, thank you for being here as well. We appreciate your presence and your partnership, always. We also have members of the district cabinet here. Please raise your hand. Our leadership team is here in full force. In case there are any questions that come up that they would be helpful in, we have school principals here as well. Thank you for being a school principal and putting in your, again, like our cabinet, your 12th or 13th hour now. And we also have some teachers who are here. I think I'm the only one, though, who's acting in my official capacity. I am here as the superintendent of Maricopa Unified School District. This is my second year here in Maricopa. It's my 30th year in public education. And I am honored and privileged to work here in Maricopa representing the great work of a lot of excellent, excellent professionals. When we began our process that leads us here tonight, I kind of have to go back in history with last year. When Dr. Chestnut left and I arrived, it was also at the timing of a new strategic plan. So last August 2018, we got together as a group of over 100 people to craft a vision for the hopes and dreams for the kids of Maricopa. And we called it the Maricopa Why. And in that group that crafted this vision, we had elected officials, the mayor, the city manager, we had business representation, we had faith-based representation, we had parents, we had students, we had teachers, we had administration. It was a wonderful representation of Maricopa to craft that Maricopa Why. From all of that creativity, we created and articulated 4 goals for the district that drive our work every single day. Goal 1 has to do with every student graduating prepared to lead and exceed, create and innovate. Our second goal relates to 100% access to and equity in excellent programs and resources. Our third goal has to do with an organizational culture that prioritizes people over programs. And our fourth goal is community pride through excellent customer service, effective two-way communication, sound business practices, and safe and attractive facilities. And it's that goal 4, becoming the community pride of Maricopa, that brings us here tonight. So we crafted our vision and we created goals. And if you were a part of that process, which I know a number of you in here were, thank you. You did a great job, because that hard work, visioning, has paid off in fine fashion. And let me tell you a handful of accomplishments that we've had. We opened a community preschool this year. We were just there today visiting. We opened a community preschool that is led by certified teachers. It's a full-day academic program and is full. It's full, actually. The full-day program is full and has a waiting list, and we are now licensing additional rooms so that we can serve more families in Maricopa. We're very proud of that community preschool. At the other end of the spectrum, we have increased, we meaning Maricopa High School, has increased the graduation rate by 10%. And if you have any kids at Maricopa High School, it's very likely that you're familiar with the great teaching and the great programs that are available there. One of which is the addition of an AP Capstone program. And that AP Capstone program really complements the already robust, rich and rigorous AP offerings and creates greater relevance and project-based learning for our students. And if you've driven on the 347, you've seen that red billboard that talks about the 7-point-something million in college scholarships. We had to turn in our print order early for that billboard. It's actually over 8 million in college scholarships at Maricopa High School from last year. So between those two bookends of preschool and the great work at the high school, we have a couple of A schools. We have an A+ school of excellence. We have middle schools that are sending students to compete and win nationally in the Future Cities competition. That is a wonderful culmination of project-based learning exercise. So we have so many great things that are happening in Maricopa Unified, and those are just a few. Also last year, we spent some time thinking about that demographic study that happened in the spring of 2018, actually before I arrived as superintendent, like a month before I arrived as superintendent. And if you're familiar with that demographic study, there's no surprise that Maricopa, the growth in the city of Maricopa, is explosive, right? And likewise, the growth in Maricopa Unified could also be described as explosive. And you can see there the projection of growth and enrollment over the next 8 years. So we began thinking about this in the fall of 2018. Also, we weren't the only ones thinking about it. The School Facilities Board, which is a state agency that analyzes and keeps tabs on enrollment and space, called us up and said, hey, you're way over capacity at the high school. We are ready to talk with you about funding a new high school, a second high school, because you're over capacity. According to our formula, and we agreed, you're over capacity. So in the fall of 2018, the state was preparing what they would present to the legislature the next year so that we could receive funding to construct a second high school in Maricopa Unified. So we also started a capital planning committee, and many of the people who participated in our visioning for our strategic plan also participated in the capital planning committee that met over the course of the year to analyze not only the overcrowding and what that looked like, but also to analyze the life cycle projects, the condition of the facilities. And many of our schools are 10 to 12 years old, and so those the elements of the construction of the building that we would refer to as life cycle, obviously that was becoming very relevant because those do have a limited lifespan, just like the roof over your own house has a lifespan. You wish it would last 30 years, but it just doesn't. And so those were the elements that were analyzed by the capital planning committee as well. Roofs, HVAC systems, weatherization. We also had to think about something that we didn't have to think about 20 years ago or 15 to the same degree, and that's safety enhancements. When our schools were built, when any school was built 10 years ago, we weren't putting the bulletproof glass and bullet resistant, we call it bullet resistant glass, and bulletproof desks in. We weren't thinking about the technology that it would take to expedite the arrival of first responders and the effectiveness of first responders. So that costs a lot of money to update and install and provide for the safety of your kids and grandkids. We also had to think about the buses, the transportation system in Maricopa. I think we are driving about 800,000 miles a school year, 3,000 kids a day. I think the average age of our bus is like over 12 years old. And the wear and tear on buses in Maricopa is atypical because we drive over some unpaved roads. So there's some maintenance and repair and replacement that isn't, like I said, is just not typical to something that you might find in the paved roads in Phoenix. So this capital planning committee analyzed all of those elements, prioritized everything, and we worked as a group to come to consensus about what would be most important. Overcrowding at the high school continued to be very important, managing the overcrowding at the high school and addressing the needs of the life cycle projects like roofs, HVAC, safety, and buses. So when all of that is sort of filtered through our manner of funding education in the state of Arizona. And I'll speak briefly about that. About 10 years ago, the state decided to not fund capital budgets according to the letter of the law. That was a legislative decision to not fund capital budgets according to the letter of the law. As a result, over the past 10 years, we have operated with about 85% less capital funding than the state formula would have afforded us. So obviously, stuff starts to fall apart. We're constantly in emergency management, and so that's been a factor for us. Now, a couple years ago, the state decided to return to the level of funding from 2009. It will take us 3 years to get there. We're in our second year now, so we'll have one more year and we will be at the level that we were in 2009. But if you think about the cost of anything from 2009 to the cost of now, you know how things escalate. So when we combine all of those factors, the growing population, growing enrollment, the recognition of the overcrowding from state facilities, the needs that the Capital Planning Committee analyzed and prioritized, the funding deficit. That brought our governing board to the very important and serious decision to call for a $68 million bond election to address those factors. So, specifically speaking about the $68 million bond, would be used to build the second high school. Added to that $26 million from the SFB, some of that money would go towards the second high school. It would go towards the life cycle projects of repair and replacement of HVACs, roofs, weatherization. We'd invest in our transportation, our buses, and we would also invest in safety enhancements at all schools. This obviously has a tax impact to every homeowner and business owner in the district, and it's $122 per year per 100,000 of assessed valuation. Assessed valuation is different than market value, so do the calculation in your head. And we know that the average assessed value in Maricopa is about $117,000. So it would be a little more than 122, and I think that's probably in your voter information packet, and we handed out voter information. So that's all of this that we're talking about, that I'm telling you is in that pamphlet, and you can take it with you and ponder. So those bonds, which reminds me, I did not say earlier that Randy Stein is here from Stiefel. They are the underwriters of the bond, and we wanted to make sure that we had the expert in the room to answer any nuanced question you might have regarding tax rate, payoff, anything, any kind of impact or question that you might have. Randy is an expert and can do that. The bonds are sold in chunks over 10 years, and then each chunk we have 20 years to pay back. Randy can speak to any benefit or likelihood of refinancing for a lower interest rate, all of that stuff. She can speak to all of that. So obviously that's an impact, and I would imagine that's what drives motivates your attendance here tonight, is what does it mean for me or you as a homeowner. So we have done a number of these presentations around town over the past month or so, and typically a question that I get is, you just did this 3 years ago. How come you already need more money? And so it's important for me to take a minute to distinguish between the override from 2016, that was passed, that was an election, and the bond of 2019. And you can see the differences there. The funding from the override was a maintenance and operations override, so that's funding that is for people and programs that are consumed in 1 year, with the exception of a smaller investment in technology that will last more than 1 year. So we have a 10% override. This year we received $4.2 million from that override. It's enrollment driven. And like it says there, it's people and programs, what happens in the classroom in 1 year. That M&O override is good for 7 years. At the end of the 5th year, we start to lose funding. By a third in year 6, by 2/3 in year 7. So there's a shelf life on the override, the M&O override. And we used that money according to the plan and the promise, which was to lower class sizes and invest in technology. This is the 3rd year we have done exactly that. Our class sizes, K-5, are below the target, district average across the board, and we monitor it every Monday to make sure we can stay within that range. The bond is everything that I've just talked about. It is not maintenance and operation money. It's not money that we can spend on salaries and programs. It's money that we have to spend on things that have a life of more than 5 years. So that's the construction of a school, that's the purchase of buses, and so forth, like we discussed. And then you can see the terms of that, of the bond sale. So next slide. So it's two different things. I want to distinguish that for you. And as I said, the first year we hired 50 additional teachers and have invested in technology every year, and we continue to invest those funds according to that plan and that promise, and we'll continue to do so. So that is the believe it or not, Reader's Digest version. Does anybody even know what the Reader's Digest is anymore? I know. Let's get a shout out for the cool kids in the room. If you know what Reader's Digest is, you're super cool in my book. You guys don't know, but I still like you. So that's the override. Excuse me, the bond. The bond. Mr. Beckett.
Did you talk about the oversight committee? I saw that.
Oh, did I miss that? Okay. When the bond passes, we are committed to transparency, which is why we invited you in to ask questions and share opinions. We're committed to transparency, so we will have an oversight committee made up of a representative, again, sample, kind of like the group that helped us craft our vision, the group that helped us capital plan. And then we want to bring in some people that are the unlikely members. Maybe some of you in here would want to be part of that oversight committee that will help us account for everything we say and every dime that we spend. We're very open about that. So that will be a critical piece of this initiative, is having that oversight committee, being transparent and accountable. Thank you for bringing that up. So what can I answer? Yes, Councilmember Vitiello.
When do you think the high school will be built? Approximately.
Approximately, well, we're looking at July of 2022 to open. Yeah, soon, and it would be sooner if there wasn't such a labor shortage.
And the schoolhouse, how many?
Well, the money from the SFB is enough to build space for 1,300 students, but we envision a comprehensive high school that could accommodate close to 2,000, that has gymnasium, football, baseball, soccer, a comprehensive high school. It's important, I'll bring up, based on that the money from the SFB only funds what is considered a starter high school. That's their term, a starter high school. It doesn't fund gymnasiums. It doesn't fund football fields, baseball fields. It doesn't fund carpet. It funds the bare minimum of what we can call a school. And we're very grateful for that. But it is truly a starter high school, and it's about 1/3 of the money we would need to construct a comprehensive high school that we would want to, where you would want to enroll your kids or your grandkids. Thank you for asking.
So
Vice
that
Mayor?
begs the question, then, how do you gather the shortfall that you would need in order to complete the things that are necessary for the school to be fully operational?
In order to, well, that's the bond proposition right there. If SFB has only given us 1/3 of what is necessary, that's what drives us to this point here, is asking our voters to approve a $68 million bond, most of which would go to supplement that SFB money to build a comprehensive high school, not just a starter high school. Yes. There and then here. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay, it says that you're going to land acquisition. You don't have the land yet, and where would you purchase this land? You have a site.
We do not have a site identified.
But doesn't the district own a lot of these, say in like different subdivisions, they have areas for school?
That is.
What a starter school would work in.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, the district does own some land. Those are in 12 or fewer acre parcels.
That's good enough for a starter school, right?
Well, our current high school is on 40 some acres. A typical comprehensive high school is on about 60. So what we think the kids and grandkids of Maricopa deserve is a comprehensive high school that isn't limited by a 12-acre parcel of land.
So you're going to sell all that other land?
The board has directed me to engage a broker, and so and that's part of what's in the public board agendas, that they are meeting in executive session to discuss land acquisition, land sale, donation, etc.
The other thing is, I see that there's $2 million for capital improvements for the administration office, which was built, what, 5 years ago? So if that was not, this building wasn't good enough, what's going to make your decision to enhance it or make it better? Why would we want to fund anything, new buildings and stuff, when this was supposed to be state of the art, and obviously it's not, because you're wanting to put $2 million into it.
And I think there's a timeline attached to that, probably like over 10 years or something like that. And again, roof, HVAC systems, weatherization.
When they built this, that wasn't a consideration. When they built this, you didn't consider maintenance, putting in new roofs down the road, insurance for that, whatever. That wasn't considered?
Well, what I will tell you about SFB funding, which is kind of part of this conversation, when you are limited by the SFB, your money only goes so far. So we are dealing with, and I can't speak specifically to this building, but at our schools, we're dealing with the limitations of the limits on the funding at the schools. We don't have top-of-the-line roofs or HVAC systems. We have what could be purchased with that SFB money. So I understand your skepticism,
Well,
but
because it's going to raise my taxes considerably.
Yeah.
They're already going up for the school district $50 next year. 50 doesn't sound much when you're on no income coming in except for retirement. That's a lot of freaking money. I'm sorry, because everybody else wants their 2 cents also.
Right.
The water department does, the electric, So giving it to the schools, when I don't see good management of the schools, it makes it very hard to say yes. Plus now this whole bond thing is coming out that you've got to go. It's only one thing on the voting. One item. You have to go there. If you can get your little early voting ballot, but then you have to go to the Apache Junction Recorder's Office, Casa Grande Recorder's Office, or the Florence Voters Registration. Or you can bring it at the day of. Now, I would say your chances of people voting, except for those who really want to push it, goes down tremendously. So how much are you paying for this, having this special election just for this?
I'll answer your questions. I'll go back to the beginning when you talked about management of money. I will tell you that as a leadership team, we have Dave Ramsey'd the heck out of our budget. We've taken some heat for what are some unpopular decisions. For example, we have eliminated overtime. Unless it's a maintenance or transportation need, we don't pay overtime anymore. We are adhering to our budget. We stopped paying to have uniforms laundered. We eliminated cell phone stipends. And probably the most unpopular is the elimination of an assigned full-time substitute teacher at the school. But we chose to put that money elsewhere. So I can speak for the last year and you know the previous couple months of money management, and we're prepared, and we have a board who absolutely has, you know, understands your concern and is committed to sound business practices. But I will reflect on that, you know, that funding issue that we talked about from the state. I understand your concern and your skepticism, and that's why we have the oversight committee, so we can continue to be transparent about the decisions that we're making. We chose to do the election this year because we are, if you participated in the capital planning committee, and some of you did, when we were having those conversations last year, we were already 2 years behind. So time is of the essence. We are 600 students over capacity at the high school. We needed to make a move on this so that it is manageable. We can manage it for 3 years. We added 16 classrooms to the high school. They're portable classrooms. It's a temporary solution, and they're full. We hired 10 teachers. They have full classes. So that's why we chose to do the election this year. It costs, I think we paid at district expense over $80,000, if I'm trying to find Mr. Harmon, to finance the election. We have to pay for that. So you can see why we would make difficult decisions elsewhere, because we needed to invest in adding this high school.
Well, kind of the same decisions about your position. How many administrators have we had? I've been here 10 years, and one they got rid of, but they had to pay him for a whole year because they got rid of his job, and then had to pay somebody else. So that was a total waste of and these are the people that I know that they sit on this board, and they do it out of the goodness of their heart because they're not getting money for it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not making necessarily wise decisions. In the last one, Dr. Chestnut made sure that his pension that he brought from state of Washington was fully in there, so he could then start building on pension number 2 through us. So I don't think there's wise moves necessarily being made there.
I thank you for mentioning that the board is there. They are fully volunteers. That's not a paid position. But if you look at the Auditor General's report, you'll see what the administrative spending is in Maricopa Unified, and you will find that it's below average in the state of Arizona. So that's something that the Auditor General does for everyone in the state of Arizona, so that you can assess us. You can see what that means. Yes.
You said earlier that the bonds could be sold in blocks over 10 years. What is the vision? How do you think that's going to play out?
Well, it's we don't get. And I'll ask Randy Stein to join me up here. We don't get $68 million on November 6th. It will take us a while to sell to the capacity of $68 million. And that's contingent upon some market influences and so forth. And if I want to be sure that we answer your question, so I'm going to turn it over to Randy Stein.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just part 2 to that, Randy. Since the selling of the bonds could be over a period of time, what's the impact of population growth and adding new rooftops and more revenue stream? What's the impact of that towards paying it down either sooner or reducing the impact per household?
So the package that is presented to you in the voter pamphlet is an estimate, and it can change over time. Very importantly, the authorization to sell the bonds for school districts is good for 10 years. Okay, so if 10 years pass and all 68 million has not been sold, it actually expires. Okay. The way the package that is presented, the estimate in the pamphlet is presented, it contemplates 4 sales. I believe they're about $16 or $17 million each over, it looks like the last one is, it's not all the way to 29. This again can change over time. The general motivation, the general incentive with putting together a voter pamphlet is to be conservative. So the spacing of those bond sales, you also asked the questions about more rooftops, more houses, how does that play into it? Well, the timing of the sales could change. If the timing of the sales did not change at all from what you see at your pamphlet, it would reduce the tax rate that has been projected. There's a couple other pieces in the voter pamphlet, again, that are probably conservative estimates, but that's sort of the motivation and the intent, not just in Maricopa Unified School Districts all across the state. You want to present what you expect to be the conservative approach to your voters. Nobody is interested in voters coming back 5 years from now and saying, hey, you told us you could sell those bonds and it was going to cost us 0.5%, but that's not the way it is. So the general approach is to be conservative, and that is in putting together the estimates as well as the expected interest rate, but the timing as well.
So one more follow-up. The $122 per 100,000 assessed value, that's not going to arrive in one lump sum then. I mean, that'll increase gradually as the bonds are sold?
The district currently has bonds outstanding. You should have received your tax bill for fiscal 20. I believe your bond tax rate for the school district was $1.20 right now. The projection in your voter pamphlet will show you that we, on a conservative basis, estimate that tax rate will increase to $1.80, which is the combination of the existing bonds and the new bonds, and that goes on for several years, and then we expect it to decline a little bit. The $1.22 that you're referencing is the average bond tax rate with this scenario over the life cycle of this bond program. I guess we should touch on that issue a little bit. I believe it's been discussed. The statute restricts what the voter pamphlet can look like vis-a-vis estimating growth in the property value of the entire district. It is pretty restrictive. In your case, the estimate is less than 1% growth per year for 5 years, and then it goes down to less than 0.25% growth for the remaining time period. That's just based on what the statute permits, the prior 10-year average. If you think about the prior 10 years, they've been wacky, right? So we actually have some big negative numbers that are still bringing that average down. Now, what you've been experiencing in property value growth, in the last 5 or 6 years is obviously substantially more than that, which brings in your rooftop question. And I guess, that would be the good news, that, the one thing we always say about our debt service schedules and voter pamphlets, they are wrong. We know they're wrong, okay? It's just an estimate. We believe that it's conservative and that it will actually come in with tax rates lower than what is shown there. But, we saw what happened in 2008 and 2009, so we know it can.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I'd like to address the human issue. I have an 11-year-old that's going to be going to high school in 4 years. Is there going to be a his space for him if we continue at the rate that we're at right now in terms of growth? And if not, then what it becomes the plan?
Well, we have the 26 million from the SFB, 22.5 is for the high school, and then 3.5 is for purchase of land if necessary. No matter what happens, we know we have that funding, and we will begin to build that second high school. If this doesn't pass, we have to ask again because the needs don't change. The roofs don't repair themselves and replace themselves. The HVAC doesn't take care of itself. Kids are still going to move to, families are still going to move to Maricopa. It's a great place to live and getting better and better and better. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And I believe that Maricopa will come through for Maricopa, you know, for the kids of Maricopa.
So we talk about 2019 dollars now in 3 years. If it doesn't pass, this doesn't pass in 3 or 4 years, we're talking about $22, which I'm not sure most people take that into consideration.
Yeah.
The dollars we're dealing with now are less than what we're going to be dealing with in 4 or 5 years if we don't pass it.
You're very right. That's part of the urgency is that construction costs increase, I think, 6% a year. So the same amount of money goes less distance, but the need increases. So time is of the essence. Thank you for asking that. Yes, sir.
So is the $122 for 100K, is that just spread out over the year for just like normal, just for the people who are paying it? I guess that'd be everybody.
Is it in
So I
your
think your
escrow?
question was, how do you pay that $122? And let's just, if we can just talk about what that means for a minute. That's a home with a limited property value of approximately $100,000. The limited property value of your house is substantially different right now. This changes over time, but the current real estate market, it is substantially different than what you think you could sell your house for. Okay, so just bring that to your attention. Right now, what you think you could sell your house for is higher than that limited property value. And how the property taxes work is you pay property taxes on all manner of government jurisdictions in which your property resides. So that's the city, the county, the school district. There could be all manner of special districts. There are state rates. So you pay property taxes on all of those. It's the responsibility of the county treasurer to send the tax bill. It is all included there. So the tax bills, tax payments are, I think they're due October 1, delinquent November 1st, and the second half is due March 1, delinquent May 1. So generally they're paid in those two big chunks. If you have a mortgage, it's all built into that payment that you make to the mortgage company, and the mortgage company will make your property tax payment for you. And it varies by county, whether if you have a mortgage, if you actually are sent the property tax bill, so that can vary by county how that's done. But it is included in that property tax, and I believe Maricopa Unified, the current bond tax rate for the current year is $1.20. That is already on your tax bill. And that has nothing to do, you know, that's what you're paying now. And the way this bond program is structured is generally as those payments are phasing down, this bond program, the payments would be, you know, included in the future property tax bills. The staging, so it comes on somewhat gradually. We talked about the max rate we had estimated for both the existing and a new bond program to be approximately $1.80.
It sounds like if I cancel Netflix, I could fund my son's high school.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Thank you.
So
Council member.
basically, to break it down, if you look at the $122, it's based on 12 months, it's $10.17 a month.
Yeah.
If your house is it's based at $150,000, which I would assume some people's houses here may be assessed at. I think mine's assessed at like 180. You're looking at less than roughly $20 a month. So I think that's something that we need to, again, whether $1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or $10, everybody's got a different situation, so I don't want to make it just sound like it's $20. But again, I'm looking at the future of my grandchildren. That's what I look at. And in 10 years from now, this population in the city of Maricopa is probably going to be close to 125,000 people. Where are we going to put our kids? That's what I look at.
Mhm. Right.
And, I have grandchildren. That's really what I'm talking about. My grandchildren need a place to go to school. And I've got starting from newborn up to 13 years old. So they're going to be going to school here for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's where I look at this, whether it's $10, $20, $30, whatever the case may be. I look at this as the future of our children, our future council members, our future governor, mayor, coming out of this, and school teachers, coming out of our school district. And if we don't invest in our grandchildren and our children today, when are we going to invest in our children? That's how I'm really approaching it. So that's why I am voting yes. I'm voting yes because the future of our schools and bringing in economic development into this city is based on growth of housing, growth of schools, grading schools. Without those, what CEO wants to move into this city? That's the way you got to look at it. Everybody says fix the 347. Everybody says we need businesses here. We can't be businesses here when our school district isn't at top notch. That's why people sometimes, in the beginning, 10, 15 years ago, were moving out of here to go to Chandler and Gilbert. The bottom line is we can't keep affording to lose. Is it 900 kids a day get driven out of the city? I think the number was 900 kids go out of school every day, out of this place, out of our city. What happens if when our schools become even better and better and better, like they are growing, those 900 kids are going to come back? Now where are we going to put them? That's what we got to look at. Long term, not short term.
Right. Mary, Grace, and then Mr. Michael.
If I could just give a parent's perspective on what an overcrowded school feels like. As a family, we decided to not do transportation anymore because the bus was crazy. Sometimes they're trying to fit students on the floor. Buses would have to be delayed. They would leave kids at schools and have to come back, which would make a very long day. So buses was out of the question. Graduation, if you've been to graduation, it's ridiculously large. Parking is crazy. They now have to try and bring a shuttle in. There's no seating for all the attendants. Prom is, there's no venue in town large enough for prom, so we have to send our kids dangerously out of town to a large enough venue. Beginning of the school year, classes have to be changed and stressfully balanced out because some classes are overcrowded. My son didn't even have a desk in the first few weeks because there was some classes that there was just too many students, and it's very stressful to a student to figure out, is my schedule going to stay the same? Is it going to change? Lab equipment is scarce. Lunches were crowded. They had to bring in and start another lunch period. So there's 3 lunch periods now. It's not just a building we're looking at. We're looking at parking. We're looking at student-teacher ratios, counseling opportunities. There's counseling that is needed for students, and if it's an overcrowded school, how are these students going to get quality counseling? You can only bring in so many portables. It's safety. We only have one official SRO. We've got security officers, but we only have one official SRO for an overcapacity high school. That in and of itself should be raising parents' concerns. It's a lot more than just a building. It's to benefit these students, and I wholeheartedly believe in this district These kids deserve it. They deserve a better future and better opportunities. And it should be that because we are Maricopa, these kids get the best, not because we are Maricopa, they don't get the best. We need to elevate ourselves and our town. And to follow that up, can you address the concerns of the overcrowding as far as plans for the next 2 or 3 years?
Mhm.
Because we can't bring in more portables.
Yeah.
Are there any plans? Because we even have now charter parents who are rethinking their decision, which
Mhm.
and the houses are still being built. So
Yeah.
next year, beginning of year, we're going to have still more overcapacity. What are the plans?
We have a plan for next year because we still have some space that's only being used part of the day, part of the 24-hour cycle. And so we have a plan for next year, and we have a plan for the year after that's going to require we're going to have to spend some more money to figure that out. And then that's plan A, plan B, plan C. There's 23 more letters of the alphabet that we will continue to problem solve, because part of what we're committed to is being nimble, having and agile, and having some options. So we have a plan for 3 years, because that's how long we have the portables. That's a temporary solution. It's a 3-year lease. So we're going to have to be creative and resourceful. Before I get to Mr. Michael, I will not forget your question. I want to make sure that I introduce Patty Coutre, board member who is here. Thank you for being here. Stepped in, slid in, and Council Member Nancy Smith. Thank you for being here. Mr. Michael.
Ladies and gentlemen, about 2 weeks ago now,
Mm-hmm.
the superintendent invited me to make a tour of the high school. I had explained to her in another meeting that I had been on 2 committees, and one in Ohio and one in Wisconsin, where we had to take this issue up. The one in West Carrollton, Ohio, we had kids sitting in the hallway in the windowsills because they were in the old high school that was built for 800. We had 1,600 kids just in the middle school. We had to build a new building. That's what it was. The one up in Wisconsin was the same situation. We had to build a new grade school, but we also had to build a new middle school because of the mechanics of the school, and the school itself with the asbestos and everything was making it useless. So last year they went out and had another bond issue and sold that. But I learned a long time ago, an individual told me, if you think education is expensive, wait till you see what ignorance costs us. Okay? There's only one thing that I got to say. I'm looking at my taxes down here. I came from Wisconsin. My finance director here, the lady I live with, she'll tell you for 57 years, she'll tell you that our taxes were what, over 4,600? And that was the same size, that was the same size houses I got down here that we're paying what, 21? So we're on fixed income. I'm retired military. Okay? Best damn job in the world. Nothing like leading soldiers. I'm telling you that. Couldn't find the job I was taking when I got out. So I started my own business. But we have the same size house down here that we have up there. And we were talking about it, and she talked to me about taxes. And I looked at her and I said, is Grace worth it? Grace is my granddaughter. She goes to school here in Maricopa. She's worth it. She's worth it. Every one of my grandchildren are worth it. I got one that's graduating with very high honors from the University of Wisconsin in December, a year ahead of herself, because she took that AP program at Racine High School, where she went to high school, Racine Lutheran. She took the AP program and went into college a year ahead. So I like to see stuff like this because I have my degree too, and I explained some things with the superintendent about
totally.
math. Okay? I'm a big believer in the lattice system, box system, and I also gave her a book by a guy named Trachtenberg. You want to see something exciting about math? Read about Mr. Jocko Trachtenberg. I am behind this 100% because we're growing. Vic, Henry, what was the census when we took the spatial census in 2015?
That was a special census.
Yeah, but before that, what did they have? It was 43,000?
Oh, population size?
Yeah.
Yeah, before that, well, we were trying to get to 50, but we actually ended up.
Missed it by hair,
it
didn't we?
was like 46, 47.
Yeah, we missed it by a hair, but they're saying now it's gonna be over 50.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where are you gonna put them? Do you wanna do like West Carrollton did? Put them in the windowsills? I don't think we need a trailer park up here either. That's one of the things I asked the superintendent, take me to where the trailers are, I wanted to see them. Because I want to see how those kids are being housed.
Pretty nice.
So, is that what we want here? Sometimes you gotta take your pockets and go like this, people.
What else can I answer or hear? Sir?
Has there been any thought to this new high school? Because not every kid goes to college. They can have that high school vocational, a trade school of some kind that students can learn to do a trade, be a carpenter, be a nurse, something that they don't have to go to college for and still be educated.
Yeah.
We just opened up the seats.
Thank you so much for asking that. We actually have members of our transportation department here too. So as we progress down this path, we're going to talk about not just what's going to happen at the second high school. We're going to talk about secondary education in Maricopa Unified School District, which is 6th through 12th grade, and talk about what technical or vocational programs we're going to invest in both locations, and which ones will be concentrated in one or the other. Because we are committed to developing our kids if they want to go take the college track, if you will, or if they want to go through the career and technical education side of what we have to offer. So yes, we're going to continue to develop those ideas. Have had some great meetings with, Mr. Watson is working specifically with the Director of Education at Ak-Chin on developing some of those ideas, looking at our DECA programs, looking at our Air Force Junior ROTC, looking at agri-science and investing in a program that can help develop that industry and profession as well. So absolutely, we're looking, and that's what a rich, robust high school can offer, is a variety of programs, because we want to develop a workforce for Maricopa. We don't want kids to grow up in Maricopa and get educated and then leave. We want kids to grow up in Maricopa and thrive and live and invest back in Maricopa. And that takes a variety of paths to that graduation.
I know right now we're sending kids to Cabot. But not everybody knows what Cabot is.
And Cabot is that's another vehicle for those types of certifications, whether it's auto tech or culinary, and I'm thinking of the ones that are located at Maricopa High School, auto tech, culinary, the DECA side of things, which is more entrepreneurial. But absolutely, there's fashion design, say that again?
Graphic design, or visual design, photography.
Those are just on campus.
Yeah, those
Right.
are just our, IT.
Yeah.
And then at Cabot, the kids do fire science, cosmetology, law enforcement, massage therapy. We run 2 buses from Maricopa High School to Cabot, a morning and an afternoon.
So, a variety of offerings. Yes, sir?
What's the status of our middle school populations? Is there a trickle-down effect that we're facing in the future?
The population growth, the enrollment growth is noticed most at the high school. Our middle schools are not over capacity. Until every classroom is filled at the middle school and elementary level, we wouldn't be considered over capacity. We have some campuses that do have, elementary campuses that do have every classroom filled, but we have others that don't have every classroom filled. So we would change boundaries and relocate students before we would be considered overcrowded.
When you say the student population might go from 11 to 13,000 people in 8 years, they all don't show up at the high school.
No, they don't.
So is there a grand plan that?
Well, we're looking at boundary changes so that we can fill empty classrooms, and then we go from there. We've mentioned the land that we owned, that can be part of the conversation. But building a school is, we talk about like we're buying a couple pairs of shoes. You're throwing around these $68 million. So building a campus is tens of millions of dollars. So, and obviously it takes a group effort to do that, whether from the state meeting us part of the way and then the community meeting us the rest of the way. So yes, it's just not as urgent as the second high school is. Yes, sir?
Hey, I have a concern that I have in terms of, again, thinking about what was in the past as opposed to what we're dealing with now, looking towards the future. And I applaud you for having this conversation and the effort that you've taken also to try to educate the community.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly glad that you made the distinction between the bond and the override, and that we're talking two different pots of money going to different places. Because there are people who will argue that point that we already did that, as you stated. But the overall concern that I have is that, see, all these people here are in agreement because they're here. They actually came. There might be a couple that decided no, but the rest of us are here, and we're going to go out and talk to other people and encourage them to vote yes. Correct? So that's why we're here. And those that maybe are still kind of on the fence a little bit, at least they can get the questions answered about where their dollars are going to go. But as I stated before, my major concern is the human factor. Where do these kids go when there's no space for them to go? What are the plans that someone else has that would require or not require us to actually take these steps? Where are the other recommendations with the letters that you probably received, the emails that you probably received? Where are the other recommendations and suggestions as opposed to just, no, I don't want to do this because it's going to cost me an extra $1.20 a month, or excuse me, $10.15 a month. What's I guess my major concern is backup strategy. Like I said, I only got 4 years before we're in that situation, and I want to be able to say that because we supported this effort, it made a difference in this kids' lives.
I'm here as the superintendent, and I have to speak factually. Our goal in Maricopa, a goal of Maricopa Unified, is to be the primary source for education in the city of Maricopa. We know there's options out there. There's options in every other city in the state of Arizona as well. We want to be the primary source. And so we will continue our efforts to that end. That's the fact.
But you have to. Even
Right.
if they do, you still have to. Because you have the bulk of the students there. Even if the other schools have the capacity to do maybe a couple of hundred, you still have the responsibility of providing.
Between the students and the staff, it's 8,000 people every day, over 8,000 people every day, students and staff.
And you and I have talked, my pet peeve is people leaving here every day, going to other school districts.
I take it personally.
Yeah, I take it personally every time I see them.
Your grandson had a question.
I know this is kind of unrelated, but what was the purpose of taking away 6th grade from elementary school and adding it to middle school?
It's kind of totally related because it was regarding space. We didn't have enough space at the elementary school, so we shifted to the middle school so we could create more classroom space at the elementary schools. That was a great question. You had a question, sir.
Yeah, so I'm new here in Maricopa. We just moved here in August 1st. We closed on our home. I'm from Wisconsin. I'm prior military as well. So, and I'm just putting this out there because you mentioned that everybody here, I'm actually a no person as it stands.
Okay.
I'm here to hear your reasons as to why it's a yes. One of the things that we have to be careful of, and I've addressed this to some of your staff already, is this insulating idea of let's surround ourselves with a bunch of other yes people and feel good, so that way when you guys come across someone like me and I'm going to ask hard questions, you haven't been prepared for it yet. Again, new, so I've been playing catch up, listening to your online planning committees. I wish I could have found them in the transcript because it would have been far faster. My concern, and this is part of why it's not, we moved to Maricopa because it was a low tax area. I agree. I've looked at your schools and I go, yes, you guys need to do something. But I've also come from a district that they just kept raising the tax. We needed for better schools, and it went from 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 to 5,000 for my parents in their case, where it just kept going. I'm like, we're out, and there was no tangible evidence, no proof that any of that additional money was being used wisely. And we talk about this additional revenue growth with the additional homes that are being built. You have to consider people that are on fixed incomes who, if you guys continue to add these taxes, are going to go, you know what, I'm going to get out of here before it gets worse. And people like me, I watch trends. I did the whole like neighborhood search because we just picked up and moved across country because the military said we'll pay you for it. I'm like, all right, we'll do it. But that's something that you guys need to consider, is that I've watched this whole process of let's keep adding taxes. I guess last year Red for Ed was the thing or something like that. There was an override. So already me just coming and walking into this without no prior knowledge, I'm looking at going, you guys want to do 3 educational tax increases in the course of 2 years. And part of my concern is as you said, we're paying off bonds from previous time, and we're already checking out. For me, again, I'm going, so we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I know that's oversimplification of it, but you have debt that we haven't even dealt with, and we're going to add more debt to it. And for some of it, you're talking about life cycle. Is that not built into the budget that we pay on a typical basis? That should be something. We just buy a new washer and dryer. I'm building that into my budget so that in 10 years, I'm going to have roughly that amount to get another washer and dryer. I'm of the opinion that government should run under the same concept that we do in a normal household. We're not teaching our children fiscal responsibility at the national level. We can at least do it here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about the Dave Ramseying of the Maricopa
Yes,
Unified School District.
did love that.
I don't know if you were here for that, but we also, we talked about the funding situation, the 85% less funding from the legislature that we've had over 10 years. So, and I don't want to rehash that for everyone who was here, but I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk with you about those details. I'm glad that you're here. That's why we have these conversations, because we know we are committed to transparency. And my hope, I would invite you to be part of the oversight committee, because you bring a critical eye. And I'm not looking for a bunch of yeses. We need two-way conversation that is critical and accurate, and with the primary interest of accountability. So that's important to us.
And I assure you, I know my audience.
Well, the other concern is, so we had this the bonds that were previously done, and now obviously the city has experienced tremendous growth, and that's great. But are we making sure that we're planning so that in 10 years from now, when we are halfway through these bonds, we're going, oh, we've got to do this again, and then we're going to have to rehash these same situations? How are we looking towards that future? It was just addressed with that middle school. Like, the middle schools aren't at capacity, so we're not even worried about it. It should be something that we should be looking at based on our growth, if it were to stay the same.
Well, I would tell you that in having a conversation with another resident, kind of the same concern, same question. Why didn't you plan for the construction of a second high school? And we get about $50 million a year, $52 million a year. 85% of that goes to salaries, and then maintenance. We get $2 million in capital funding. Capital is for those longer, bigger investments that have a life of more than 5 years. So that is things like roofs, et cetera. A roof for an elementary school is a couple $100,000. So we simply are not funded for the future. We are funded for, and the philosophy of the state is to spend this year's money on this year's kids. So we do hold some back for emergencies and things that go bump in the night, like the need to install 16 portable classrooms for $2 million. We did have the savings to be able to do that, to house the students at the high school. But it would take us, if we have 26 million from the state, but it requires, 60 some or close to 70 to build a second high school, at the rate of $1 million a year, it would be 40 years. And this is the same answer that I gave that other gentleman, that's not how it works in Arizona anyway. We do have to be able to, and I, like I said, I mean, I wish we could spend more time together, and I invite you to do that, as we can unfold this conversation about the realities of how the capital funding works. There's a lawsuit in the state of Arizona because it's not just Maricopa Unified that's dealing with it. There are districts who have buildings that are condemned because of the lack of repair. So it's our planning this is our planning, and just the way that the system is in Arizona, it doesn't promote that kind of, it doesn't allow for that kind of outcome. I appreciate you asking. I thank you for bringing that up. Mr. Judd, and then here, okay?
I just wanted to get back, because I'm a military guy too, and I'm from Connecticut, and I know what high taxes look like. But you come mission-oriented, and you've had very specific points and very specific questions, so I want to get right back to it. Do you realize what Maricopa looked like in '06, to go back to when you said you already have an outstanding bond that you didn't pay down?
I am aware, I looked at your history, and you had that humongous explosive growth. So I understand that, but to look on the flip side, I'm assuming Mr. Bremer, I believe, the person who you did the
Demo.
demographics. Again, I'm not coming in this entirely blind.
I didn't want to assume anything that, that you knew or didn't know.
My concern is that we're projecting a growth that includes that humongous jump that developed for who knows what, and that may never come again. So those statistics might be wrong, and then you have two partially used high schools, and I've seen this where then now we've just shuttled everybody back to one. You've got this big old building that does nothing.
Okay. Just to go back to the other point that you were asking about, you were talking about, the school was asking for money 3 different times in X amount of years. Just to reinforce the point that's already been made, that override request has nothing to do with building construction. So when you were saying you were in that city and you weren't seeing it, where's the measurement of growth? That has to do with the override. Maricopa failed 7 overrides consecutively prior to passing that.
What was the reason for that?
Well, there's lots of questions about that, and we can address those if you like. But my point is that there were 7 continuous failed ones until we finally passed it. Okay. But the point that I'm making is, I don't want you to think that we're asking for money again for the same reason. This is strictly based on growth, and it's the construction as the city grows. We simply need to house children and educate, and it really boils down to that. So we're not asking for a second override. We're still on our override. This is specifically for structure to educate children.
Right here, and then Mr. Irving?
Is there not a bond capacity cap that you could bond out? Meaning, we can't, will we be protected from this concern of multiple bonds over multiple years? Isn't there a bonding capacity cap that you have to live within?
There is. There's a statutory cap, which is based on the amount of property value in the jurisdiction. The two ways that, and this district is relatively close to the cap, and in fact would not be able to sell all 68 million, even if you wanted to at one time, because it would exceed the cap. There's two ways that the cap changes, and that's when property value changes every year, and as you pay off bonds that are already outstanding. Yes.
So, just a final note, the kids are coming with or without this bond.
That's right.
Mhm.
What do you want to do?
That's right.
And
Coming.
Mr. Irving?
First of all, I really want to thank you for coming and you for coming, because you're right. I worked on all the bond issues, and we only talk to ourselves. And it takes a lot of courage to come and say the stuff you're doing, because that makes it real to us. So I think all of us appreciate that. I'm from Illinois, and I served on a committee to build a new high school, and the demographers, which we paid a lot of money for, he told us that the growth was going to go one way. It went the opposite. We wound up with a high school we couldn't use. The problem is not just here, but especially in the Midwest, people are moving out. The house we had when we left Illinois, the taxes were over $11,000 per year. And people are leaving, and Illinois is almost bankrupt. You know what Wisconsin went through, and Governor Walker tried to correct it. It's a tough call, and I think the issues you raise are right. All anybody can do is to try to look at the data, look at the growth, look at the pattern, and make decisions, because you're exactly right. When I moved here in '04, there was one little high school, and all of a sudden, boom, on the city planning commission, we deal with the same thing. Why isn't there multiple housing? Why aren't there apartments? I heard it today. Why aren't you have a hospital? It's a tough situation we're in, and I applaud like the city council. They have some hard decisions to make. I know my friend Nancy sits up there, and you want to hold it tight, but again, especially in education in the United States of America, it's never been funded right. And it does fall back locally. Federal government would like to make it even more so. So I think these are hard decisions. It's good to get your input. I think one of the things you asked me, then we all need to bring to, well, what are some of the alternatives? You asked me. Well, yeah, the alternatives are 4-day school, 50 kids in the classroom, cut
Double
out sports and
sessions.
music, like some schools in the Midwest are doing, go to Saturday school, and that's what my people might want, because I know my brother-in-law has had his house paid off for 10 years. His tax payment is more than my mortgage payment. And you're exactly right. The issue is, though, how do we collectively solve the problem? Because people are still moving in droves to Maricopa. But I think it's good for you guys to come and say, hey, look, can you manage better? This is the only district in the world I know of. We don't have assistance. Because again, this district to me has been a little too...
All I have ever heard, even with Rich Patelio, saying, it is only $10 a month.
Well, I agree with
Do
you
you
there.
know, my church asked me for that,
Right.
the city,
Got no problem.
the power, the lights, the water, you name it.
You-
It's only,
You-
all charities, it's only.
You have no argument for me at all. When I got my first electricity bill out here and water bill, I almost died. So, I agree with you. I think the issue is, it's still the issue.
But Illinois has been throwing money, as you've got the Chicago Public Schools
Yeah.
on strike right now for what? They're making more than the downstate Illinois people are making, but they can't live within that
Well, that's why the whole state's bankrupt.
because of Chicago. I hate to say that, but that's what it is. I got a brother who lives
Well, I don't want to,
Yeah.
all I'm saying is, I think both of you, for me as a volunteer, appreciate it. The issue is, how can we all sit down and talk about, I'm retired too, from the good old state of Illinois. I'm worried about my retirement's gonna stop because they have no money. So
Yeah, because we're gonna get our pensions from there,
so
let's, you know.
I guess all we're saying is it's good, we really need to hear what you're saying. We need to, like Dr. Holman said, sit down and figure, okay, here's where we are, we love our city, it's gonna grow, we're glad it's gonna grow. We're glad, you know, we can't get the hospital, do we get more people? Can't get more people, do we get, so it's a matter of everybody coming and being up front like you are and say, okay, here's some suggestions that we'd like to throw. That's exactly what I think Dr. Lookman's talking about. I'm glad you're here.
And to that note, like, when we're talking about like bringing people in, 'cause, our third day here, I had to figure out where to take my youngest son to a hospital because we thought he had appendicitis. And so did the doctors up until 2 in the morning, he magically disappeared. That's neither here nor there. In fact, because I'm in agreement that we need to do something to help grow the community. But have we looked at other options? Have you guys approached things such as Volkswagen and Nissan who have facilities here and asked them to help partake in building the community that they're sitting right outside of?
Yeah.
Or other
Good idea.
big businesses that are around.
Yeah.
If we want to bring big business here, if we want to bring executives here, we have to reach out, we have to make ourselves attractive to that. And they're going to want to be able to put themselves out there as well.
We do. I mean, we on council, we have a very active, interactive council. We have an incredible mayor that is always trying to find opportunities for the city to bring businesses in so we can create jobs. So we do. We take a lot of time, spend a lot of time at that, take that very serious. But one of the key I think Richard mentioned it before, one of the key areas is education. If we don't provide a community that has a legitimate and decent education system, then those businesses won't bring those jobs here because they won't be satisfied with the quality of education that we're providing. Unfortunately, the way that this is coming about is has all to do with the fact that it wasn't well thought of prior to now. And that's why I say I applaud Dr. Lookman on what she's doing now and presenting to us the way it's been presented to us. I don't necessarily want to pay additional dollars, for a school as well. I don't necessarily want to do that. But unfortunately, the way that this structure is put in place, until we come up with an alternative, then we'll have to deal with this and move forward. But yes, we do. We have good corporate citizens that support our efforts, that participate in the process, participate in the community, help the community to grow. And this is one of those things that we just can't seem to unravel, and I see one of the things I think that's important to me is to stop those buses from flowing every day going north to Tempe and out to Tempe and what have you. So if we had, and the comment was made that the administration, that part of it has to do with the administration, the bad management, what have you. There was a period of time when that was the case. Absolutely. That doesn't exist anymore because of the effort that is being put forth, by the administration. There was a time where it was questionable where dollars were going. So that doesn't exist today. So we can't hold this administration responsible for something that somebody else did. And hopefully, if it's to your satisfaction, you get the information you need to suggest that you will move forward with it or without it. With it or without it, it's just that, as was stated, those kids are coming anyway. Those families are moving into Maricopa. Now, in spite of our electric bills and our water bills, people are moving into Maricopa, and it's going to continue. And so we don't have to continue to find decent solutions
Did you have a question?
as we go along.
This gentleman here, and then back to you. Yes.
Yeah, just a couple quick questions. I apologize because I came in a little late. The packet doesn't have how long the bond is for. Is it 10 years? Or years for the bond?
So that,
Or is it just based on the amount? Yeah.
so the authorization, if approved in November, the $68 million authorization can be sold within the next 10 years.
Okay.
Bonds, school district bonds in the state of Arizona, once sold, have to be paid off within 20 years.
Okay. In other words, the $122 per 100,000 assessed value, we pay that for how long?
So the the $1.22 number is the average tax rate over the life of the bonds. And under this scenario, that would be through fiscal year 2048.
Okay. The estimate is that we'll be paying that through 2048.
Through 2048. And the tax rate, though, is structured that it starts dropping down as you go farther out, because the first bonds that you issued are being paid off.
Okay.
So that number is the average, but that's not the number throughout the life.
Okay. And then on the assessed value, you mentioned it was LPV, it's not FCV, it's not full cash value, it's limited property value?
Correct.
Okay. And then just to summarize, I think what I heard when I was walking in, there are funds, if the bond doesn't, let's say doesn't pass, there are still some funds or grants to do a starter school, to get a land and do a starter school to at least get that, but the hope is the bond passes to have some extra amenities in the gym and those things. Is that correct?
Right.
Did I understand correctly?
The legislature has approved $26 million, 22.5 for construction, 3.5 for purchase of land if necessary for the construction of the high school. That is about a third of what it takes to build a comprehensive high school, and a third of what it takes for the acreage required. So,
Okay.
right.
So if it didn't pass, is the administration just going to go ahead and still try to get some land and get things rolling, or
Yes.
are you
And-
to think about that? We'll
and-
cross that bridge if and when it doesn't
We've
pass?
thought about it a lot.
Okay.
And we are still going to go forward with our plans. The scale in the first year will be impacted by whether this passes. But if it doesn't pass, I would imagine that our board, because the facts won't change, I could see our board deciding to call for a bond election. Because as many of you have said, the projection is there, the need is there, and we might find ourselves here again. Potentially, so.
I just want to clarify, we've been talking about the tax rate in terms of a house, but all property owners in the district are subject to the tax as well. So the businesses would also be paying the tax rate associated with the bond, like they do all other property taxes. Property taxes in Arizona are great. It's challenging conversation. So, but it does, I just didn't want there to be a misconception that it only applied to homeowners, because it does also apply to all the businesses that are located within the school district boundary.
The commercial properties pay a different rate?
Yes.
The tax rate is not different, they are assessed differently. The homeowner assessment is 10%, the typical commercial assessment is 18%.
18.
That can vary, but then the rate is always the same for every taxpayer.
Yes, sir.
So he mentioned the 900 students going out of town every day. Have we figured out why they're going out of town? I mean, what are they doing there that we're not doing here, and why aren't we doing it better?
They're passing their,
Well,
passing their bonds.
I'm talking about the classes they're teaching, the teachers. Are they getting the better teachers? Are we not getting the best teachers? Are we not giving everything that we can to teach these kids and give them all the different stuff in the classes that they want to learn that they're doing over there at the other schools?
When I say they're passing their bonds and their overrides, that's providing the additional revenue that you need to pay teachers higher salaries, to change and have better facilities as well. So
the bond doesn't go to salaries, right?
no.
No, bonds
Bonds
don't.
go to salaries.
No, they don't, like the facility, as the
Override.
facilities, yeah, right. So the
So we'll-
overrides, they're passing those,
I'll
and
let you
therefore
answer.
they're able to pay higher salaries.
And
My question is this.
If you look at the auditor's website, you can see the numbers. In Kyrene, for example, they're operating on about 3,000 more per student than Maricopa Unified is, because they have a consistent revenue stream of bonds and overrides and a different tax base. So there is some pretty significant differences.
Is there anything we can do about it as far as changing
Well, that,
some of the stuff that we teach our kids here that would
Well,
We're coming back.
and that's that whole strategic plan is talking about the math and the ELA investments that we've done, the technology investments, the CTE investments. Every single day, we're talking about how we can be better. And we have a tremendous investment in professional development. It would rival any districts. And so we're continuing to invest there. And then on the accountability side of what does that investment look like in the classroom? How is it translating? What does it mean for students and their achievement? So without, that's a whole nother class that we would have to do. So let's, right here and then to Ms. Spalt, yes.
Well, to speak to your question, my family has been here for over 15 years. When we first moved, we had a child who was in Kyrene. We were up there. And when we came down, we came to the high school and spoke directly with the principal at the time. I can't remember what his name was, but explained that our daughter had been moved into a higher level math class. So once she got into high school, what would they be able to provide for her? And he said, nothing. And we said, okay, now this was 15 years ago. So we continued to ship her to Kyrene until she moved into high school and she went to Mountain Point. She finished Mountain Point, went to NAU, became a mechanical engineer. Number 2 came along and they still weren't ready for the math. So we shipped her to Mountain Point and she's at NAU in health sciences. Number 3 came along and he automatically chose to go to Mountain Point. It was not a good fit for him. So we offered to have him come back. Best decision ever. He could not be more happy. He's a senior this year. Got these 2 to thank for it. He's in the highest math. He's in all honors AP. He's so happy. But what he's being offered just simply wasn't offered back then. So the comparison now to then is just light years.
Yeah.
Just light years. So maybe that's helpful.
Parent perspective is always helpful. Ms. Balt?
I'm going to stick to factual information. I teach at Maricopa High School. I've been there for a decade. And as a teacher, I would say that what I would encourage people in the community to do is take Dr. Lopman up on the Thursday tours and come see our classes. Come see what we're doing. Because we led the state in national board certified teachers. The fact that those districts that the kids are being bused to pay their employees better, and that some teachers have continued to stay for decades and more, I think that speaks a lot. But people don't know if they don't have their kids there, if they don't come see. So I would just encourage people to come, and she's there every week. So
What do you mean by certified teachers in the state? So
say it again.
for people that don't know, what does that mean?
The national board certification is what people call the gold standard of teaching certification.
Yeah.
So you're putting your teaching practice up against a national standard, not a state standard. So because I'm a nationally board certified teacher, I could go to any state and have my certificate renewed. Whereas if other teachers were transferring, they would have to update their certificate, take exams over, blah, blah, blah. Not all states have reciprocity from state to state. But with national board certification, you're saying this is the best teaching practice that I can give, and then you recertify that every 5 years. So you redo a component. So we led the state in number of teachers who certified last school year, and we also have another, the second, or one of the largest cohorts again, moving forward this year. So I think that there are a lot of teachers who are super committed to this district and to this community. And that's why we're here.
People I can honestly attest, Dr. Logan had a meeting at City Hall said, I own it. She's been very responsive to me. I've asked her questions, and she said, I'll either know the answer or get you the answer. And she's been very good at it. Like I said, she took me on a Thursday tour up here. I remember when she said she owned it. That means it's hers. I think, Mr. Wade, you were there, Deputy, remember it was about the
No.
monies.
Mm.
And she said,
It's always
first thing
about
she
money.
said was,
So, a couple things. The state will give us the $23 million to build a starter school. We cannot use that money to renovate any existing buildings that we have. We cannot use that money to fix any roofs, any ACs, or purchase any buses. We can build a starter school, but a starter school is not going to have the amenities, it's not going to have the equitable education that the other students will have. And so we'll have parents that'll be in that district or in that boundary that'll have to go to that starter school, and they're not going to want to go to that starter school. They're going to want to go to the school that has all the amenities. So when the board looked at it and we voted on whether or not to go for this bond, that was one of the discussions that we had. We wanted to make sure that every student had the same opportunities at the schools because we want them to succeed. As far as the buses going into town, that's only going to stop when the parents choose to choose MUSD. Those schools in Tempe, in Kyrene, in Chandler, they have community support. They have constantly passed overrides and bonds, and that's why they're able to do what they're able to do. And if this community gets behind what we're doing and supports our schools, we'll be just in the same category as them. And then we can start busing in.
We'll be ahead of them.
Would be a destination.
Okay, so I will close by saying that it is certainly our obligation and our privilege to hear every single perspective that's been presented tonight. It's welcome. Membership in that oversight committee is encouraged, and when the bond passes, we'll be looking for the critical eye. I hope that if you are curious about what happens in any Maricopa Unified School, that you'll take me up on a Thursday tour. I don't just tour the high school, but I'll tour any of the schools. Like I said, we were at preschool today, but we can go anywhere. I'm very proud of the work that is done here, and I'm very proud of the commitment to ongoing improvement that happens too every day in every classroom. What we expect out of our kids is also what we expect out of each other as professionals, and so it's part of our culture. I got to get these principals home to bed. So I want to thank you very much for coming tonight, and I look forward to more conversations. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.